Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Peoples here again. And last time that we talked, we were looking at how the countries of Europe started to gain more land outside of Europe. Italy taking over places in Africa, Germany rebuilding itself and breaking the Treaty of Versailles. And we talked about the leaders of all of the countries that are involved in World War II. We're now going to talk about how Hitler specifically started to take over places in Europe and how he did it without a whole lot of opposition. There weren't a lot of people telling him to stop, or there were people telling him to stop, but he just didn't listen to them. And so after Hitler moves military vehicles into the Rhineland, that area between France and Germany, Hitler then demands control of an area called the Sudetenland. The Sudetenland is the northern region of Czechoslovakia. And the reason he demands control of this area is because he claimed that there were very large numbers of true German people living in that area. That's what he said publicly. What we know now is that that area of the Sudetenland holds many of the forts that Czechoslovakia had to protect themselves. It is also a very hilly region, so once those forts were taken over, or if they had been taken over by any kind of an enemy, the Czechoslovakians would not be able to protect themselves. And people at the time didn't realize that. But Hitler demanded control of this region, and I'm going to zoom in here so you can see it. He demands control of this orange area here of Czechoslovakia called the Sudetenland. Again, he said because there were a lot of Germans there. But in reality, he was setting himself up to take control of the most powerful part of Czechoslovakia so that he could then take over the rest of the country. He also, by this time, had taken over Austria, the country that you can see down below here, this country right here. He took over Austria, and there was no fighting involved with that. The Austrians connected themselves very closely with Germany. And so he was able to take over Austria with no problem. And then he set his sights on the Sudetenland. Okay, if I were to show you this, map. Okay, so again, we had Germany taking over the Rhineland. Then he took over Austria, and then Hitler sets his sights on the Sudetenland and takes the Sudetenland. Very short time after that, he's going to try and take over Czechoslovakia. Now, the world at this point is saying, hold on now, Hitler. You can't just take over places that you think are yours. And the Czechoslovakians turned to their allies. They turned to France and Great Britain. And France and Great Britain didn't want a repeat of World War I. And so they tried to deal with the situation by making agreements with Hitler. The process was called the appeasement approach. And it was basically a policy of avoiding war with an aggressive nation by giving in to its demands. Think of it this way. Some bully is taking your lunch money. And rather than standing up and fighting the bully, you appease the bully by just giving them your lunch money. That's kind of what France and Great Britain were doing here. They didn't want to get into a fight. And so rather than fighting, they just said, okay, you can have that area of the Sudetenland, but you have to promise not to take any more land. So Hitler signs this deal. He signs a piece of paper promising to not take over any more areas in Europe. So Germany was handed control of the Sudetenland by France and Great Britain in return for Hitler saying, I'm done. There were a lot of people that didn't believe Hitler. One of them was a man by the name of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill eventually becomes the Prime Minister of Britain. And so this is one man who didn't believe Hitler's agreement. And he actually was correct. Hitler didn't have any plans of keeping his word. And so after He's given the Sudetenland. He very quickly after that takes over Czechoslovakia. So if I can go back to that map again. So after being given the Sudetenland, he then takes over the rest of Czechoslovakia. And the Czechoslovakian people had nothing that they could do to stop it. So if you can see this now, it's not even 1939 yet. And Hitler has taken over the rest of Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia. And World War II hasn't even started yet. And he's been pretty much given those things, in the case of Czechoslovakia, by the other leaders. Now in 1939, things start to speed up. In August of 1939, the news of this event shocks the world. Adolf Hitler signs a pact or an agreement with Joseph Stalin. Now the reason why this shocks the world is that Joseph Stalin was the Russian leader. He was a communist. And Hitler very clearly in his book called Mein Kampf, when he wrote his book, he very clearly states that his goal is to take over Russia, and his goal is, or that he hates communists. Stalin is both of those. He's in control of Russia and he's a communist. And so this surprises the world when in August of 1939, Hitler and Stalin make an agreement not to fight each other. Now, the way it works is that Hitler had a plan already. Hitler had told Stalin that next month he was going to invade Poland. And he promised Stalin that if they chose not to fight each other, Stalin could have the other half of Poland. Let me show you on a map what this looks like. So here's Poland right here. Hitler was going to attack into Poland, and he told the Soviet leader, you can have this half over here, and I'm going to take this half. Let's just promise not to fight each other. Now this was very smart because Hitler believed that Stalin wouldn't break his word. And Stalin, for a moment there, believed that Hitler wasn't going to break his word. But we're going to see that that doesn't happen. You can also see Italy here on this map. Italy's taking over other places. When Hitler starts to take over places, Italy takes over places in Africa, as well as you can see there, Albania has fallen to Italy. On September 1st, 1939, Adolf Hitler and the German army marches into Poland, officially starting World War II. And you can see the Soviet Union marched into the other half of Poland and took the other half. Now, this was, a lot of people believe that this was coming, but they didn't want it to happen, especially Britain and France, being that just 20 years earlier they had been involved in World War I. But on September 3rd, 2 days after the Germans invade Poland, Britain and France, known as the Allied powers, declare war on Germany. And officially, World War II has started. Now, Hitler uses a style of war called blitzkrieg, or lightning war, which was a strategy of quick, hard attacks into Poland, and the Polish army wasn't prepared, and the Allied powers weren't prepared for this. It was a new style of fighting, and I'll show you a video clip of what that looks like in class. In October of 1939, so a month after the war has started, Germany and the Soviet Union have control over Poland. Now, by the spring of the next year, so over that winter, Germany conquers Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. So if you look on this map here again, so over the next winter, so September 1st, October, Poland is taken control of. Over the next winter, Hungary and Romania, Bulgaria, they all fall. The Germans then set their sights on these other countries. Denmark first, Norway next. This is within a couple of months. Okay? You have Belgium, the Netherlands, and by the spring of 1940, the Germans have virtually taken over all of Europe. It happened that quickly. June 22nd, 1940, France surrenders to Germany. And so in less than 1 year, Hitler gains control over all of this area. Now you might be asking, why not Spain? Well, Spain was an ally of Germany, and so Hitler had no need to take it over because he had a friend there in Spain. So you can see this happens very quickly and shocks the world. The only Allied power that's left at this point is Britain, an island country, and they're stuck out on this island facing Germany alone. Now, in this time period, you have the miracle at Dunkirk, where the British forces are lifted off of the continent of Europe to return back to Britain. We talked about that in class already. But it happens very quickly that Hitler takes over Europe. I'm going to pause right here, and I'll come back with another one that finishes up talking about not only the Battle of Britain, but then how the United States